This video is meant to clarify any questions you might have about Napoleon's rule in France. There are two parts. Born on the island of Corsica, Napoleon's family, the Buonapartes, were part of the nobility there. When Corsica became part of France in the spoils of a war, they became a low-ranking family of the French Second Estate. Embarrassed by his low status, Napoleon Bonaparte changed his name to Bonaparte so it would sound more elegant and more French, and he would be better accepted. Because of his social status, he was eligible to attend French school, and being a gifted military student, he excelled there. Siding with the Jacobins during the French Revolution, he got his first officer commission in the French Wars beginning in 1792. And in an early campaign, when his commanding officer was killed, he assumed the lead and won the battle. From then, he quickly moved up the ranks, and his battle victories were acclaimed all over France in the French press, and they really repaired French pride after their initial losses at war, so he was very much beloved. Napoleon's military decisions, however intelligent and reasoned, do not indicate that he was an enlightened leader. The military is not an enlightened organization. It never has or will be. He was just a great general, but Napoleon's Egyptian campaign does give us a peek into his personality. Riding high on his successes, Napoleon decided to attack Egypt to weaken Britain by closing off overland access to its prize colony, India. But before embarking, Napoleon floated a fake report out to British spies that he would be sailing from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic. So the British positioned their navy there to await him. Meanwhile, Napoleon went to Egypt, where his troops won some pretty decisive victories, and Napoleon established control over the local population. Of course, the British figured out what had happened, and they came up behind his fleet, which was moored in the harbor, and sunk the entire fleet, stranding Napoleon's troops there in Egypt. Napoleon's control over Egypt was more complicated than winning the battles to get it. There were frequent uprisings. So to calm the locals, Napoleon proclaimed that he had liberated them from the Ottoman Empire and praised himself, and he even praised their religion, Islam, as a wonderful faith, although he cared nothing about religion. He did recognize that religion motivated people to do things, and so he used it to his political advantage. He was so long in Egypt that Napoleon decided to try to move his troops north to capture the Holy Land, figuring the French would like that. And so he directed his troops into battle once again. This proved disastrous. They encountered troops that were far more powerful than they had seen in Egypt, and they were losing terribly when a ship arrived with a message from Napoleon's brother that the time was right for Napoleon to come back to France and take over the Directory. So he abandoned his troops, hopped on that ship, and sailed off to France. At this point, by 1800 or so, 1799, when Napoleon arrived, France had conquered a lot more land. To its north, it added the Batavian Republic to its rule, and to its south, much of the Italian peninsula that had been controlled by Austrian rulers. I'm going to skip over the details of Napoleon's successful coup d'etat, but it was bloodless. The people were unhappy with the Directory, which had been in power since 1795, because the Directory didn't solve all of France's problems and taxes were high, so they were enthusiastic for a change. And since Napoleon was a winning general, they figured he was the ticket to their success. So in 1799, he arrived and he proclaimed himself leader of the consulate, the new consulate. And in 2 years he proclaimed himself leader for life. And 2 years after that, he proclaimed himself emperor. Each change he made was approved by a plebiscite, a simple yes or no vote. Now, the plebiscite doesn't ask or reveal anything about what he would do as the head of France. It does give Frenchmen some say, but just as a point of approval. It would be as if I polled you all asking, do you want to be successful? And you would all say, yes, I want to be successful. And then I'd say, okay. And so now your homework load is tripled because that's the path to success. And you're thinking, well, that's not what you had signed up for. There was a legislature, and according to this, it looks like it reflects Montesquieu's ideas on checks and balances. But A, there were no elections. Napoleon appointed all of the members. And B, the job of each branch doesn't actually oversee the job of the other branches. So checks and balances were minimal at best. We'll pick up in part 2